This is Maury Miller, and I'm meeting with Nancy Howe, and this is September 17th. And so I'm going to begin, Nancy, by asking, when and where were you born?
I was born in Olney, Illinois, to immigrant from Switzerland, grandparents, and my mother came from Olney, and she went back there to have me.
And what was the date?
1942, October 13th.
Okay. And who were your parents?
Leland and Catherine Mullen.
Okay.
They lived in Casey. My dad was from Casey, farmer.
Okay. And did you have brothers or sisters?
I have one brother.
Okay. And then you said this is in Olney?
I was born in Olney.
Okay.
But my dad was from Casey.
Okay. And then where did you begin growing up?
Casey.
In Casey.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then when did you come to Marshall?
I came to Marshall in, let's see, I moved to Marshall. Gosh, I don't remember. It's been...
Well, how old were you then?
It's been about 25 years ago.
Okay.
Approximately. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let's go back to your youth in Casey then. Did you live in town, in the country? What's your neighborhood like?
Farmer.
You're a farmer.
Well, my brother is now the 5th generation on the family farm.
Okay. And what was the neighborhood like?
Oh, it was wonderful. We just so happened to have two neighbors about a quarter of a mile from us. Each one had a boy and a girl. So there was 3 boys and 3 girls, and we ran together all the time. Ride our bikes all over the countryside and had a wonderful life.
Okay. Did you have chores on the farm?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. So
gather eggs and I'd cry,
eggs.
so Mom would let me
got to play. Okay. Well, other than riding bikes, what were some of your favorite playtime activities?
Hide and go seek, tag. This was when we were little. We liked to, when Mom wasn't watching, we liked to go up and down the corn rows. She was afraid we was going to get lost. I think, how are we going to get lost? It goes in a straight line, Mom.
Okay. Well, what about some neighborhood activities? Church, other things you did in the neighborhood?
We went to church in town, to the EUB church in Casey. Then there was not a lot of community events going on in our neighborhood. So we usually went into Casey for anything that was going on. My uncle and my aunt had Perry's Hardware in Casey for years and years, and we spent a lot of time there, like at Christmas time and everything, because my mom and dad would go in and help them because there was no Walmarts back then or anything.
Sure.
So they had everything in that hardware store. They had, anything you'd want. It was like everything was there. And so it was a 3-story building, and it was full of stuff. And we liked to ride our tricycles. The top floor, he had tricycles that he hadn't brought down yet to sell to the children. And so my brother and I would go up and down the aisles riding those tricycles.
Okay. Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, well, they didn't like it much because we kind of scratched them up.
Okay. Well, let's talk about school. Where did you go to school?
Casey. Hazeldale. I went to grade school in Hazeldale.
Okay.
And because we were only 4 miles from there.
Okay.
And so it was a 4-room school with a teacher with every 2 classes. When I first started going to school was it was a 1-room school, and there was all 8 grades in the 1 room. And Mrs. Gaddis was the teacher, and it was the main thing I remember about that school was there was a big storm, and we didn't have a bus at that time. It was just I think just parents either brought you or a car would come and take the neighborhood kids, pick them up and take them to school. But there was a big storm coming, and they could only tell by clouds back in those days. It wasn't broadcast on the radio or anything. And so the teacher got upset and fearful. So she made arrangements to get us out of there and take us home. Well, when I got home, we never locked our doors. There was nobody there, and it was just me by myself. And I didn't know my brother was 2 years younger. He wasn't in school yet. And I didn't know where everybody was, and the clouds were rolling in, and the thunder was crashing, and the lightning was going, and I was so afraid. I slept upstairs. So between crashes of thunder, I'd run upstairs and grab an armload of dolls and bears. They were going to be my protection on the couch. And so I guess I didn't cry till Mom and Dad got there, because they went to school to get me, and it was empty. There was nobody there. And so they said when they walked through the door, I wasn't crying, but as soon as they came through the door, I burst into tears. And it was probably the most terrifying thing that happened.
Sure. And how old were you then?
First grade.
First grade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after, you went there for how long?
I only went there a year.
A year. And then you went to the
2
bigger
years.
school with 4 rooms.
Yeah. 2 years I went there.
Okay.
Because I was there for second grade too. But then, see, they passed me to the second grade, and then during that time, they sent me to Hazeldale. And the first grade teacher there, Mrs. Keller, Mrs. Keller said... Okay,
so then the bigger school.
Hazeldale. Okay, when I got to the second grade in Hazeldale, the teacher called my parents in and said, she knows nothing. She has been taught nothing. She can't read. She just doesn't know anything. And I remember my teacher was Mrs. Gaddis in the first school, the one-room school. And I remember I'd raise my hand, and she was so tiny, she could sit down with me in a little first grade seat, and it had the desk attached the way they did back then. And she would sit down, and she would work my notebooks for me, and didn't have me doing it. She was doing it for me.
Oh.
And so when I got to Hazeldale, they said I knew nothing. So they had to put me back in the first grade.
Oh.
So I went through first grade twice, and my son tells me now, nobody flunks first grade. I said, well, I did. But anyway, so I enjoyed the school at Hazeldale, and there was 4 teachers for every 2 grades, and I went there all 8 years then.
Okay.
And
through the 8th grade, yes.
Yeah, through the 8th grade. Hazeldale did not send you into junior high. They kept you there at that time. Maybe there wasn't even a junior high at that time. I don't know. And then I got a very bad injury while I was there. I was, ever heard of Crack the Whip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We were playing Crack the Whip, and I was on the end. And, they run real fast and kind of flip you off. Well, they flipped me off, and it threw this top vertebrae in my neck out to where my head was hanging on my right shoulder, and I couldn't get it up. And my hands were hanging to my side, and I couldn't get them up. And they called my dad, and he came and picked me up, and there was potholes to get to town, to Casey, and he couldn't miss them all. There were so many in the road, and every time he went, oh, I would just remember I was just, hurting so bad. And, of course, they didn't have the medical technology they do today, and so the doctor just laid me on a table and put compresses, hot probably, I don't remember, on me, and gave me some medication probably to relax me. And it seemed like I laid there for hours. But when I could finally get up, I could move my neck around. But I still have a terrible injury in my neck that I can't do a lot. I can't lift. I can't carry an item that pulls me harder on one side than it does the other. Things like that. I have to be very careful. I can't sit on a hard chair because it'll throw that neck out. And so I graduated from Hazeldale. You want anything else you want to know about Hazeldale?
No, go ahead.
Graduated from Hazeldale, the 8th grade, and got a instrument. I wanted to play drums in Hazeldale. This was like 4th or 5th grade. My parents said, you will play saxophone or clarinet, but no drums. I didn't get my drums. But I played that saxophone all those years, and didn't like it. But anyway, got to high school, played saxophone all through high school, marching band and everything. Hated it. I was a good athlete. I could run. I was a fast runner, and I almost beat the 75-yard dash by just a quarter of a second. And when I was working to beat that time, it was cinders is what we were running on. I fell.
Oh, okay.
And I had cinders in my hands and my knees. And but I never did get the record broke. So let's see. School was hard for me. My dad was president of the school board. Before that time, though, he was just, the first couple, 2 or 3 years, he was just on the school board. Then they made him president of the school board about my senior year, maybe junior year. And I always said I made it through school because of my dad being on the school board, because I was not a good student. I could not seem to learn, to grasp, to understand. And they put me in remedial math. I never got out of remedial math. They never tried to put me anywhere else. I knew I was flunking civics and POD when I was a senior because I just couldn't understand government. And I just couldn't grasp these things. And so it was Kennedy and Nixon were running for president. And it was Looker Life magazine had this big picture. One week they had the one, and the next week they had the other one. And I love scrapbooking. I did that a lot all through school. I did scrapbooking, loved it. And so I cut out those big pictures on the covers of those magazines and put everything I could find on Kennedy in one book. And it was so big, it was just a regular notebook, but it was so big it was stand out like this with so much material in it. Did the same thing with Nixon. So I took those books in I was flunking, like I said, I was going to flunk. And I took those books in, and the teacher held those up. She says, "This is scrapbooks. This is what I was wanting," because they were handing in these little bitty things that didn't amount to anything. And so I passed. It got me through.
Because you had the good scrapbooks.
Yeah, God was always with me.
Okay.
And so I made it through school. Graduated. My dad was president of the school board. He handed me my diploma, which was neat. And then I went on to become a hairdresser because I knew that I could not excel in college. I'd never make it because I couldn't grasp book learning. And the hairdressing was hard because there is a lot of book learning there too. But I made a really good friend. She pulled me through that. We had our test, cosmetology test in Chicago, and she and I had it at the same time. And she was from Chicago, and so my parents drove us to Chicago to take our cosmetology test, and she drilled me all the way to Chicago. I mean, it's a 4-hour trip, maybe 5. Every step of the way, she drilled me on everything, and I passed. God's always hanging in there.
Okay. But I want to go back a little bit to talk about family life as you were a child. Talk about some of your family activities, meal times, games, things that you did together.
Oh, we had a wonderful family. Living on the farm, it was a really close connect. My parents, I thought my dad was God, and my mom was the sweetest, kindest lady to me, and my brother too. They were very loving, connected with us, and we always had our meals together. And Mom was a great cook, and we had a great extended family. I had great grandparents, aunts and uncles. My mom was the youngest of 5 children, 3 sisters and a brother, and she was born about 10 years probably after her last sister. Therefore, my brother and I were always they were like grandparents to us. Her sisters and her brother were always like grandparents because we were so much younger than our cousins. So our cousins were more like aunts and uncles. And so we grew up in a very loving kind of relationship with our family. And of course, my mom's parents were from Switzerland, so they had all this Swiss things about them, Macaroni and cheese, fried macaroni and cheese was the big meal. And what they would do, they'd fry the macaroni and they put a layer of Swiss cheese, it was still hot where it would melt. They put a layer of each, about 3 or 4 layers of cheese and macaroni, and it melt into it.
I can taste that now.
Oh yeah, and then you can do that ahead of time. Then when it melts, then you can put it in the refrigerator, keep it overnight, and then the next day they would put butter in a skillet, and they put that. It's all stuck together with the Swiss cheese, and they would put that in a skillet of butter and let it fry on one side. And my aunts knew how to do this. They could flip it in one, like a pancake, that great big wad of macaroni. And they'd have it brown, golden brown on each side. And then you'd have all that melted cheese inside. And so that was always we always had macaroni and cheese.
Well, in addition to meals, are there family activities, do you remember?
Not where we played games or anything,
okay.
But my mom was always there for us. She would put blankets out on the ground under a tree in the summertime, and we'd take our naps out there. Also, we didn't have running water, and so she'd fill up the tubs in the morning with water and put and let the sun warm it up, and that was our swimming pool. Mom always had a big, beautiful garden, and I liked to hang out with Mom when she was working in the garden, and there was a gooseberry bush, and I liked to eat the gooseberries. My dad was always working, but he was always there. He was very family-orientated, but farming was hard. Winters he was there. We loved to. This was back in TV time when Red Skelton and Jack. I don't know.
Jack Benny?
Yeah, Jack Benny. Jack Benny and all those guys were on, and Ed Sullivan and all that, and we'd all gather around and watch television together. Played cards a lot. We played a lot of cards.
Other than cards, other hobbies that you had, do you remember?
As a child, no, I didn't really. Scrapbooking.
Okay.
I did that. That was pretty much it.
Okay. And then, so you were a hairdresser for a while?
I was a hairdresser for about 12, 13 years.
Was that still in Casey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was different places. I had married and had my son, so I would go where my husband went. We lived down in Carbondale area for a while. We lived in Effingham for a short time. That was before Carbondale. He was going to school, and so we kind of were going where his education was taking him. But when I was down south, I don't remember if I just told you this or not, but I was approached by some platform artists wanting me to be a platform artist doing hair. I was good. This was in the bouffant fancy stuff, remember? Back in the 50s, 60s, I guess, 60s, 70s. And I didn't realize they were there watching me, and they were watching me comb this lady's hair out. And, you tease it up and then make it sculpture. They call it sculpture in hair. And so I was doing that, and they came over to me when I finished, and I don't remember if they worked for Clairol or what company, but they came over and they wanted to know if I would be willing to be a platform artist for the product. And I turned them down flat. I said, no, I have a child, a small baby. I would be on the road too much, wouldn't I? And he said, you'd be on the road all the time. I said, no, I can't do that. So I turned it down. But I thought it was really,
It was an opportunity.
Yeah, it was really a positive, for me. I was good at hair at Casey when I moved to Casey and started doing hair. See, I never got the bookwork when I was taking the classes, but I knew the artwork of it. And see, when I was in school, I always thought I was so dumb. But there's the left side and the right side of the brain, see? I have the right side, which is art. I don't have the left side, which is smart.
Okay.
So that's why I excelled in scrapbooking, in hairstyling, which was that fancy thing, and so I did the hairdressing for I don't know how many years, 20 years, 25 years. See, but I had this neck problem too. I would have to lay off 2 or 3 days because I've still got it. Then I did that for I had my own shop in Casey, and I had my son. In fact, it was perfect. My babysitter lived on one side of my shop. It was a little house that I made into a beauty shop. Lived in the residential area. This is in Casey. My babysitter, neighbor, good neighbor friend, was on one side of the shop. My house was on the other side of the shop. My son could run back and forth and come in the shop, go home, go to the neighbors. He was right there with me all the time, actually.
Sounds ideal.
Yeah, it was.
Well, let's talk about marriage. How did you meet your husband?
Which one?
Well, how did you meet your first husband?
My first husband. I had to have some surgery done, and he was an orderly, and I met him there, and we started dating, and he was very intelligent, and he was wanting to. He was getting I forget what he wanted. I forget what he was studying. It had to do with chemistry, but I don't remember what it was now. It's been a long time ago. But anyway, he and I got married, and we lived in Effingham for a short time. We moved to Carbondale. That's where he was. We were in Gary, Indiana. We went there before Carbondale. We went to Gary, Indiana. He was he wasn't going to school at that time. He was trying to make some money to go down to Carbondale. That's what it was. So I was pregnant with my son, and so we lived there, and he was working full time. And my son was born. We were having problems. He and I were, and so my son was born, and not long after he was born, my husband decides that he wants to get more education and pursue what he wanted to do, which was chemistry and something in chemistry. My left's a brain, you know.
Okay.
So he started school down in Carbondale. That was when I was working in that shop, and they came and wanted me to, be a platform artist. We lived down there for probably 2 years, and we broke up finally.
So what happened to you then?
Well, then I moved back home to Casey, me and my son, and that's when I started the beauty shop and had the neighbor and me on each side. And so that's when I had that. And we were there for many years, Mike and I. Mike, we had a lot of issues with my ex-husband. He was trying to kidnap my son all the time. We had to keep him under lock and key, practically.
Oh, boy.
Had to watch him, and that's why the neighbor was always watching him, and I was always watching him, and he couldn't go anywhere without saying, "Can I go?" Even when he grew up big enough to get out of the neighborhood. But my ex-husband was kind of mentally, I'd say, off, and so when we moved to Casey, when my son was little, he'd have to go be with my parents all the time so that they could watch him constantly. When he got older, that's when we were with the neighbor. But my husband had visitation rights, and so he was living in Chicago, and he came and got him for visitation. The lawyer said, we have to let him go. I said, he won't bring him back. He said, you got to let him go. It's the law. So Mike went, and he didn't bring him back.
Oh, no.
So I was 2 years hunting for my son. And so my mom and dad were a mess. I mean, they just loved him totally, too. And because we were always kind of with them by living there so much of the time. And so we had we had all kinds of people looking, searching for him. And then Dad learns of this man. He read it in I think it was a Chicago paper, that there was a man in Chicago that found everybody he looked for. He'd never missed. And so Dad contacted him, and which led to I'm having a blank spot. I don't like to talk about this. It led to finding him in Florida. My ex was in Florida living with Mike. And let's see. I'm trying to think how the situation progressed from there. My ex had married another lady who agreed. She had talked to us that he was mentally incompetent, ill. And she was Mike's stepmom. And Mike said she took very good care of him. She was good. And because he was like, kindergarten age, first year or something like that, first grade. And she finally was afraid enough of her husband, my ex-husband, that she contacted us. And the lawyer set up, the one in Chicago set up, this was in Florida, set up with a lawyer in Florida and a lawyer from Illinois. And my dad and I flew to Florida, met the lawyer. The lawyer got in the car with us. We knew exactly, the ex-wife told us exactly when he would walk to school by himself. This is first grade. Walk to school by himself. And she told us the timing and everything. So she got in the car with us to go with us. We picked her up. And she went with us to the school. We parked in the parking lot. We had the lawyer. We had all the papers. We had her with us. And the lawyer told her, says, when you see Mike walking and coming, you go meet him and act normal. But stand behind him. Be ready to grab him if he runs, because we don't know what he's told him. So she did. She got out of the car. Of course, Mike couldn't see us and didn't know we were in there yet. And she did what he told her. But Mike didn't try to run away. He looked in the car, went, because it had been 2 years since he'd seen us. And the lawyer just said, no, my dad said, my dad's in the front seat with the lawyer, I'm in the back. The lawyer said, or my dad said, get in the car, Mike. And he just got right in. And the lawyer told the other lady to get in on the other side, the other wife of my ex's. So she got in on the other side, and Mike had been late to school, which was late because we had it timed perfectly to try to catch the plane to get out of there quick. He says, you got to get out of Florida immediately. So, or they could hold us up for years or months or whatever. Like Mike was late for school, and we had the plane planned for the exact time it took us from the school to the airport. We missed the flight because he was late to school. So I remember my dad and the lawyer. The other lady had left us by this time. I don't remember how now or why, but she gotten out and was gone. But my dad and the lawyer was headed for running to the airport, and Mike and I are kind of stringing along behind. We couldn't keep up. And the first thing he really actually said to me was, "Well, Mom, I'm glad you found me."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a story.
And so I always usually cry at that, but
Quite a story.
so anyway, then they called the lawyer in Chicago, and he said, "Get another flight." Or no, the other lawyer with us. They ran in and found out another flight, which is in another town, like Fort Lauderdale or something. I don't know, in their city. I don't know where we were. I don't remember. We ran to the car. We got in the car, and we had to get out of Florida as soon as we could. And the lawyer in Chicago says, "You'll have a layover in where would you be layover? Oh, in Kentucky. Where's that layover over in Nashville or someplace. You call me from the airport when you have that layover, and you tell me you are there. And he said, then I will call the lawyer in Florida. The other lawyer in Florida already had all the papers that it was legal, so they wouldn't send the police after us. So he would immediately, as soon as they knew we were out of the state, they took all the papers to the other lawyer, my ex's lawyer, and showed that I had custody, and he had taken him illegally, and so we were out of the state, and he couldn't cause any problems. And so it was really well planned.
So you came back to Casey then?
Yeah, came back to Casey.
And then I'm going to get to when you moved to Marshall.
We're still trying to get to Marshall. Okay, I got to Marshall when, let's see, let's see. Let me look at this. Maybe I got something written here.
Okay, you have this written down, so you're looking at what you've written before.
This is all later stuff. I didn't know I was going to do all this stuff.
Okay.
I moved to Marshall in 19... I'm going to say 70... I didn't actually move here. I started my business here. Because by this time, see, I'm doing art. We're skipping all the art part. I started doing art in Casey. I was a hairdresser, but I was starting working. I took art classes in Terre Haute.
Okay, and doing art, doing what?
Art, I was taking art classes. I was learning in acrylics and oils and watercolors.
Okay. And so you were painting then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
I was an artist.
And so you were selling art in Casey? You had a shop?
Yep. Well, I still just was in my beauty shop, see. I was doing hair, doing art, and I wanted to give classes. I hadn't taken art hardly any time at all, and I was wanting to teach some art classes. And I was taken from a very good lady over at Terre Haute at the time. And so I had a friend who was in ceramics, and she had a great big house. And she says, I have a room you can rent to teach your art classes. So I said, okay, this isn't still in Casey. So I started teaching. Then, now we're where I am.
Okay.
Then I was doing art for quite a long time and still doing hair. And there was a street sale in Casey. And I was set up with my art on the street. And this lady who was a city, who coordinates or takes care of all the city functions and things like that, like street sales and things, came over to me. I knew her. I'd known her all my life. She came over to me and says, hey, how would you like to, because she knew I worked out of my beauty shop. I had no windows to show my art or any place to really show my art. I was just teaching. She says, how would you like to have a big window to show your art? I says, I would love to. She says, but you're going to have to move to Marshall.
Okay.
So that's what we did. I came to Marshall, and there was a man from Casey who had set up, it's across the street from where I am now, had set up, made booze, and was renting out the booze for different crafts and arts. So I got to use the window. There was 2 big windows. And now it's... The big money guy now made apartments out of them and everything. And one of them's a cellular phone. Part of it's a cellular phone place. But that was a building I was in across the street there. And so I was doing, he fixed up a place in the back of the building for me to teach art. So I was teaching art, I was selling art, showing it. I started doing art shows all over the area, everywhere that was having one. And I kept looking at Hilda's across the street, which isn't Hilda's anymore, it's mine. But I thought, gosh, I want to be over there in that building. I really like that building. Well, Hilda finally gave up and quit her business, and it went up for sale. And I told my dad, I says, Daddy. He says, okay. So he came over, and it was pretty good. It was in really good shape on the inside. She'd taken excellent care of it. And so we didn't have to do much, except I needed some pegboard and things up to hang my art and things like that. And Roy Matthews, who's long passed away now, Roy Matthews helped my dad. I don't know if you're from here or not and know about him, but he helped my dad fix up the inside of the building for art. And I've been there ever since. Then, so I taught art out of there and sold art, and it was it's been very rewarding. And then I had a fire upstairs.
No.
Yeah, a big fire. And are you from here? That fire.
Oh my.
Are you from here?
I was originally, but
Yeah.
I left in '64. So,
Yeah. Well, I had that fire, and
Now let me see, the date of that newspaper was...
yeah, that'll tell you a lot.
September 2004.
Yeah. And here it is when it's all over, smoke coming out of it.
Okay.
So it was quite a thing. It was awful. So, Marshall was fantastic. I never knew there could be so much community that would back somebody, especially a transplant. You know, I'm not from here originally. But the fire, my husband calls me and he says, there's a building downtown on fire. I don't know which one it is, but you better get down. This is like 7 o'clock in the morning. You better get down there now. I pulled up in the corner here, and I see the flames like it's in that picture right there, out the window. Oh, I about died. And I went around the back and parked in the back. I'll probably cry. But my husband drove up the same time I did, and he said, "Got your key?" And I said, "Yeah." I unlocked the back door, and we ran in. And he ran to the front. He said, "Give me the key to the front door, so I can let them in if they need to come in," because the firemen were already there. So he unlocked the front door, and there's no fire downstairs yet. None. In fact, it really never got down there. And so then here comes all these people running into my building from the back door, and they make a lines on both sides, and they're handing out all my stuff.
Carrying out the stuff.
They're hand by hand. They're handing it out. There's a whole big lineup. I don't know, there's probably 40 people in there. And the fire is burning above us. It could have fallen in on us at any time. But there they were. And then somebody would holler, "Hot water!" And the water comes streaming down, and we'd all run out so we wouldn't get scalded. Then as soon as the water quit running, we'd all run back in. All those people with me, helping me. And it was just wonderful. Marshall's a wonderful town.
That's a terrific story.
And so then they were, my next door neighbors, Ted and Kay Snedeker, from their buildings next to mine. They said, "You can bring everything that we can get in here." So I took so much of the stuff that we'd set outside into their building, and it had to be there for a month or more. I don't know, 2 months till they got it fixed up again. Then my husband had a shed out there, and we took the rest out there to the shed. But there was certain things I didn't want out there because it exposed to a lot of heat and cold and stuff. And like artwork, you don't want it, extremely like that. And the people, I couldn't believe the people that were always there for me and helped me. And but we had to wait for the people to redo the building, because even though the fire was contained upstairs, there was tons of damage downstairs due to the water. But here is, I think I got a picture or two of the downstairs.
Okay, I'm looking at pictures now of the building on fire. You can see the flames coming, just gushing from the upper story.
and they boarded it up, the windows afterwards. This was downstairs. That ceiling of the downstairs, they had to take it out. But here's a wonderful thing I found. There was carpeting on the floor, and when they ripped up the carpet, I thought, ceramic tile. Wow.
You didn't know that was there?
Beautiful. No, because it was all covered with carpet. And I had ordered carpet, but I called them and stopped the order. And I says, I want to keep that. And here, I had the mayor and all kinds of people helping me do the floor. There's just two guys there. And here's another picture of them working on the floor, helping me get my floor cleaned up so I could have that ceramic tile. And here's people helping and working, and it was just, Marshall was just absolutely wonderful. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better community. And so there's just, well, my mom always wanted me to move back to Casey. I said, no, I love Marshall. I don't want to move back to Casey. And she was not well, but she's gone now. But
well, those are some terrific stories, Nancy. Nancy, I have just a few other questions. I'm going to ask more general kinds of questions. Thinking back over the entire course of your lifetime, was there a particular person or event that really had a major impact on your life?
Event, I became a Christian.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Okay. But talk about that.
Okay. I was kind of a rounder. I liked to drink. I liked to shoot pool. I was a good pool shooter. I could beat the boys. I hung out at a place in Casey called the Bottle House a lot. It was a big bunch of us, and we'd go in there and shoot pool. And then we'd go down to somebody's house, my house, or somebody else's house, and have breakfast, and stuff like that. You know, we were all kind of a bunch. We all knew each other all of our lives. We went to school together and everything. And but I was kind of tired of my life, and I didn't know, what was wrong. And even though my parents had been churchgoers and everything, it never had come to me. And one night I was sitting in the Bottle House talking to me. It was just me and the bartender. There was nobody in there but us. It was a dead night. And one of the guys that used to hang out and shoot pool and party with us and everything started going to church, and he quit hanging out with us. Well, he walks in to the Bottle House and sat down on a stool next to mine, and he started giving me the gospel. And the bartender's listening too. And he must have talked for 2 hours. I don't know. Probably came in about 10, and I listened for 2 hours. And when we were done, it was closing time at midnight. And when we were done, I asked him down to my house. I says, I think I'd like to hear more. So he came down, and I didn't have a Bible. The thing I remember him saying the most, I wish you had a Bible. I want to show you what I'm saying. Well, and I probably did have one, but I just didn't know where it was. So he was going to the Lutheran church there in Casey. So I thought, well, okay, he invited me to a class for the whatever night that was going on. I thought, okay, I'd go. My grandmother, it would be my dad's mom, who's from Casey. She came and my grandfather was passed away, and she would come and eat Sunday dinners with us, lunches with us every now and then, come out to the farm. And she was always a churchgoer. When we stayed all night with her, we went to church. And my mom would have been that way too, but my dad was one of those hard-nosed guys. He wasn't when he died. He was a Christian. But when let's see, where was I at? Oh, my grandmother came out to have lunch with us. And I thought, after I became a Christian and knew more than I knew then, I realized that it was Satan using my grandmother. She says, right out of the blue, she had never used the word Lutheran in her life. She says, do you know what those Lutherans believe? They believe Christ went to hell. I thought, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? Because I was going to that class the next, a couple, 2 or 3 nights, for the first time. And but I went. I like to say that I went kicking and screaming down those stairs to that class because I didn't want to go. But I went, and I came out of there a brand new person. And I went to every class. I went to every church. Every time the doors opened, I was there. And it was a very, very teaching class. The people in there they were all very informed. And it was more of a debate. There wasn't somebody just standing up and telling you and preaching. It was a conversation. It was very interesting. And if you had a question, you didn't feel silly in asking. So I went there to those classes for as long as they went on, and went to church. And it would totally change my life. And I was still a hairdresser at that time too, and I'd drive my I'd get their hair wet and they had nowhere to go, and I'd start preaching at them and telling them the gospel, and so they couldn't go anywhere with their wet head and they were stuck. So anyway, I just couldn't get enough learning, and when I went to bed at night, my prayer every night was, give me wisdom. I wanted wisdom. I wanted to know. Well, God answered the prayer with giving me a hunger for His Word that will not stop even yet. This has been 40 years ago. I'm still so hungry for His Word that I read the Bible. I write for the newspaper. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. I write the Christian article for the newspaper. And I started that, when I moved here. It was after the fire. No, it was before the fire. Melody, I don't know if you know the Stromes or not, they're on the newspaper. Do you know them?
No.
Okay. Well, Melody and Gary are very strong Christians, and their daughter, her feet wouldn't even touch the floor, and she would. Her mom says she's taking classes. I said she's awful young. She says, well, I don't care. She's taking art classes. So she started upstairs, and she'd swing her legs because she couldn't even touch the floor with her feet as she painted, and I taught her to paint. And at Christmas. Yeah, I like those letters that people send out of their families and what's going on and everything. I thought, well, there's really not too much of a family because everybody's gone, so we don't have too much of a family thing because my aunts and uncles were so much older than my mom and dad, and they were all passed away. And so I thought, well, why don't I just write something Christian and give all my students something Christian? So I wrote up a thing, and I gave it to Melody's daughter. She took it home to her mom and dad, and Melody called me up. And she says, I cried. Did you really write that? And I says, yeah, I wrote it. She says, do you know? She says, I think that's just wonderful. And I said, well, great. So anyway, then that night I went to bed, and I thought, maybe I can write for the newspaper. So I go over and I ask Melody if she would like for me to do that. She says, do you know when we started this newspaper, I sent a letter out to every minister in the area asking someone to step up and write a weekly article, and nobody responded. She says, yes, you can write for us.
Wow.
I had no computer. I didn't know how. My spelling, I was a lousy student. My spelling and everything was horrible. She says, we'll take care of it. So I'm across the street from them. So I would write it up, and I'd run it over to them. Then they'd have to come sometime, because it's handwriting. My handwriting's not great. And they'd have to run over and what is this word? We don't know what this word is. But working together, then they kept saying, get a computer. So next thing we know, they're running across the street all the time, trying to get me to learn that computer, because, see, I'm still in the right side of my brain, and the left cannot compute. And so they actually taught me how to run the computer too.
So you can do that.
And how to email messages to them, and so it became a lot simpler. And so the newspaper has played a huge role in where I am and who I am.
One of the questions that I have on my list here to ask you is, what modern conveniences affect your life most and why? And I'm willing to bet that I can guess what you're going to say. Okay. The one other question I have here, and I've already began to address this, but if you were talking to somebody who wasn't from here, how would you describe Marshall and tell them why you live here?
Marshall has extremely kind and loving people. The fire. Extremely giving, caring, the newspaper. It's just a community of togetherness. I love Marshall.
Well, that's great. That's going to be a great way to end this interview with exactly the right thing that they're going to be looking for people who really say, this is the place that I want to be. I would feel the same way. Like I said, I grew up through high school, went through Marshall High School, and then moved away, and I've done a number of other things. But we came to Terre Haute 37 years ago, and heard about this project and said, I want to talk to people in Marshall who hear their stories. And so you've done a wonderful job here. Thank you very much, Nancy. People are going to really want to read this story. So
what are you going to? I don't even know what you're going to do with it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it because I trust people.
Okay. Well, they're simply going to make it available. There's a book out by the desk of probably 60 or 70 people now have been interviewed, and so just the interviews of people like this, and their stories being in Marshall, and many of them are lifelong residents of Marshall, and people of a variety of ages. I talked to people in their 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And then they're also going to just make those available on the library's internet page. So people who want to hear these stories, and I'm sure they're going out beyond Marshall. I'm sure people are who like to collect history stories, probably at Eastern Illinois University and Indiana State University and University of Illinois, are picking this up and hearing these stories just exactly the way you've told them.
Good.
So I appreciate this very much. Now I have a couple of other questions. Tell me again when you were born.
October 13th, 1942.
42. Okay. Well, you're a little bit older than me, but I'm just thinking of people that I knew. A couple of women from Joyce Tingley.
Oh yeah.
Becky Cox.
Yeah.
Okay, those were people that I knew. We
Becky
would do
Cox.
things together.
Did she have a brother John?
That I don't know. She married Norman Hawker.
Must be a different Becky
Okay.
Cox.
Okay.
Does she live in Casey?
No. They live, I think, in North Carolina.
Well, it might be Becky,
Okay.
but you don't know she had a brother John.
I don't know that.
See, I grew up with her. If it's the Becky
Oh,
I'm
okay,
thinking, she
okay.
lived on the other corner.
Okay.
The other two kids
Okay.
in Casey. Was she from Casey or was she from
She
Marshall?
was from Casey. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that's the Becky I knew. We rode bicycles together and everything.
Well, see, our church groups did some things together, so I got to meet those people when our church groups did
Now,
things
who was
together.
the other person you knew?
Joyce Tingley.
Yes, Joyce Tingley.
She
Yes.
had a couple of sisters, but I don't remember their names.
I don't either. But yeah, I knew Joyce Tingley too, or know her. Is she still
Okay.
living? I don't know.
I don't know. No idea.
Joyce Tingley. Oh, I know that name. She was in school with me. I'll have to get my yearbook.
Well, she's probably 2 years younger than you, because she was a couple of years
Well,
younger.
that'd be
than
all right.
me.
See, she would be probably a sophomore when I
When
was a
you were-
senior or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
But I remember the name Joyce
Yeah,
Tingley.
okay.
I know Joyce Tingley. I've got to write those down. You got a pen? So I don't forget. I don't have a memory. Becky, I'll remember. I'll go look at my
But
yearbook.
that's the only people I knew from Casey.
Yeah, see, Becky Cox was a lot younger than me. John.
Yeah.
Her brother was my
Okay,
age.
Okay.
But
Yeah, she's a year younger than me, I think, so yeah.
Did you want some pictures? Did they say pictures?
Yes.
Well, I don't know what they were wanting. I brought art pictures. I didn't know what they were wanting. See, I was under the impression this had to do with art.
Okay. Well, I surprised you then. But yes, they do. And if you would hand these to the people at the desk and tell them that they're for the collection, they will scan them. They'll give you the pictures back.
All right.
But they will scan them and keep them with the material that you've given me.
All right.
Nancy, you're a delight.
Well, thank you.
I wish that I lived in Marshall so I could say I would love to just go out to coffee with you. I would
We
just
could.
love
If
to
you ever
hang out.
visit, we can go out and coffee. That's okay. So anyway, it's and then you can tell me your story.
My wife is an artist. She's a potter, and so I'm sure she would be pleased to meet you too.
Yeah. Where do you live now?
We live in Terre Haute. I taught at Indiana State University for 35 years,
Okay.
and just retired a couple of years ago, and still live in Terre Haute. So.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Well, it's not very far.
It's
You
not
and your
very
wife
far.
come on over.
We
and
could do that.
I'd enjoy
We could
meeting
do
her.
that. Okay.
And we'll have coffee.
Well, I will do that. I will show her your shop. She would enjoy
Well,
seeing
it's not much anymore because, see, I'm not in art anymore.
Oh, you're not?
I have a lot of art hanging around. It's
Okay.
left over. But, see, I'm in prison ministry now.
You're a what?
Prison ministry. I'm in a prison ministry.
Oh,
I'm the
really?
coordinator, the founder and the coordinator of a prison ministry. And we are, there's about 10 of us in this ministry, and we average between 150 and 175 inmates we reach out to all the time,
And where do you do that?
all over the United States.
Oh, do you? Okay.
We are state and federal, and we are stay-at-home missionaries. And what we do is we reach out to Christians in prison and witness to them and help them to grow in their faith. They reach out to others and witness to them. It's like the missionaries did. The missionaries, when they first started going overseas, they tried to talk to them in their language, but they didn't know the language. But so they decided to take one person that could understand. They teach that one person and send him out.
Right.
That's what we do. We find that one person in a prison who can reach out to others. We witness to him, help build him up in his faith. He reaches out to others and send us their names and numbers, and we write to them. And then it goes snowballs from there. And God keeps it. It is amazing how God keeps it at a level where we aren't overwhelmed. When we get a bunch, we seem like there's too many. All of a sudden they start falling off while we add others. And it's just an ongoing, it's just great. But some of them we've had from the beginning that started. We've had them for like 2004. That's when the ministry started. But you're welcome to bring your wife over and look and see what I had to still have some art hanging around over there.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Anyway, I enjoyed. People always like to talk about themselves, so I've enjoyed it.
Well, you have been a delight, like I said.
Well, thank you.
I sure appreciate you coming
okay,
over today.
well,
Thank you very much, Nancy.
You're welcome. Shall I go out this way?
I think you can, yes.